Hello, my creeplings. We're breaking the millennial horror streak. I know. Oh my god, she was watching so many newer things. And we're going to go back to the 80s again. This particular one is very close to my heart. It's a bit of a cult classic. Not many people have heard of this one, possibly because it's been released under so many different names in different markets. So this is a movie from 1986 called Trick or Treat. This has nothing to do with the anthology that I went over my first October here on YouTube with Anna Paquin, and that it has nothing to do with that with Little Sam. Nope, this came first, like I said, in 1986. This is directed by Charles Martin Smith, with a screenplay by Joel Soisson. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Michael S. Murphy, Brett Topham, and two uncredited writers being Glenn Morgan and James Wong. The story was originally thought up by Brett Topham. This was put out by the De Laurentiis Group, so, a lot of the kind of independent-esque, cheesy, not so mainstream movies. I mean, the De Laurentiis Group is partially responsible for us getting so many Evil Dead movies, so it gives you, and the Conan movies, and so many other things that hit so many bullet points. We have music by the rock group Fastway, and any of the scores done by Christopher Young. That name might sound familiar to some people. Released October 24th, 1986. This was also released under the name of Ragman and Death at 33 RPM. So, if I have anybody who's in one of the other markets that's not considered an American market, if you don't recognize the name Trick or Treat, you might recognize one of those two names. The copy that I managed to find on the archive actually has the opening titles of Ragman to it. Although I do have it somewhere on VHS from its original release here in the States under the title of Trick or Treat. So, unfortunately, sometimes this happens where they change names for foreign markets, and it gets a little confusing when you're talking about names and dates. So, that's the information I have on that. So, moving onwards. So the boiled down the main plot to one sentence is the plot centers on an outcast metalhead teenager who is haunted by the ghost of his rock hero. So this is a heavy metal horror movie. This is a heavy metal supernatural film. It's got some fun cameos in it, which we'll go over in a little bit. Some of the cast is recognizable to us Gen Xers and geriatric millennials. So going through the cast list, we have our hero, Eddie Weinbauer, whose nickname is Ragman, hence the title Ragman, played by Mark Price. Now, I know Mark Price mostly from Family Ties in the 80s, the sitcom with Michael J. Fox. He played the nerdy neighbor, Skippy, who had the crush on the oldest daughter, Mallory. He was also the host of the Disney Channel's Teen Win, Lose or Draw in the mid to late 80s. There was, and I can never remember the name of this movie. I've seen it a handful of times growing up. It was an action-adventure flick where these kids, who are the children of military men, go and rescue their POW fathers. Very interesting, and he turned out a very good performance there. I think he's still doing stand-up. He was doing that. I managed to catch a Where Are They Now type show that was talking about, child stars and stuff, and teen stars of the 80s, and I think I saw he was doing stand-up through the early 2000s. I don't know if he's still doing that now. If he is, that's great. I haven't seen him, but I kind of want to. I know that sounds really, really weird. Please excuse me. My hair is... There it is. My hair is kind of sitting funny and feels weird. We have Tony Fields as our villain, Sammy Kerr. Lisa Orgioni I hope I'm pronouncing this last name correctly, as our ingenue, our female heroine, Leslie Graham. Here's another name that those geriatric millennials and young Gen Xers, definitely regular Gen Xers, should recognize. Doug Savant. He plays our villain, our bully, Tim Haney. He was on Melrose Place. So I was a teenager when that was on. I remember we were big 90210 fans in my family up until, later. Same thing with Melrose Place. But yeah, he was on Melrose Place at least for the first few years. We have Elaine Joyce as Angie Weinbauer, which is Eddie's mom. And Glenn Morgan plays Eddie's friend Roger. Everybody else that I have listed here is a cameo, which we will go over as they pop up occasionally. So, we open the movie with Ragman, Eddie, writing a letter. Now, I don't know if he ever sends these letters or if he's writing like a diary in form of letters to his rock hero, Sammy Kerr. Sammy Kerr is like the love child of Dee Snider, Blackie Lawless, and Alice Cooper, and some of the bad things they said about Ozzy in his heyday. And he's from the same town that Eddie lives in, and Eddie just idolizes the man. Well, you get a look in kind of the day-to-day life as he's recounting, how much he hates it here, how much he wants to get out, and all that stuff. He is heavily bullied by Tim and his friends. Like, it is to the point where there's one scene where they basically kick Eddie out of the locker room, butt naked, into the girls' gym class, into their physical education class. And of course, Tim's girlfriend is there with a freaking Polaroid camera taking pictures. Nowadays, that would be severely punished, but back in the 80s, it was definitely, oh, boys will be boys, ha ha ha. I'm so glad things are slowly changing. They're not changing fast enough, but I'm not going to get on that today. So, Eddie's going about his day. He goes to start chores or something, and he's watching a news report which talks about Sammy. Sammy has recently, I think a day before, died in a mysterious hotel room fire. So Sammy Kerr is dead. Eddie, in his depression, goes to the local radio station to hang out with his friend Nuke, who's an adult, that actually grew up with Sammy, who's the local rock DJ. This is our first real cameo. This is Gene Simmons of Kiss. It has been mentioned that they had originally approached him to play Sammy Kerr, but he didn't want to do it, so he played Nuke, and he modeled him after one of his favorite radio personalities, and one of mine, Mr. Wolfman Jack. I can hear a little bit of it, but not much. But they talk about Sammy, and, Nuke tells him, he was just a man. He's not, don't idolize him. But Nuke also surprises him. He's got a single press. They said it's an acetate proof. This was way back in the days of records, kids. Records and tapes were more prevalent. I don't even think CDs had quite hit the market yet as an everyday thing. So records and tapes. This is a record company demo of his last album. It had not been released yet, Sammy Kerr's. So Sammy, pre-death, had sent this to Nuke and told him to play it at midnight on Halloween. Well, Nuke has already made a copy of this. So he gives Eddie the press, the acetate record press. And Sammy was supposed to play the Halloween dance, but of course the town's elder smacked that down because Sammy's a very controversial character. Like I said, think Ozzy Osbourne, Alice Cooper, and Dee Snider all wrapped up into one with some Blackie Lawless thrown on top of it. Eddie goes about his day. He gets invited to a pool party by the girl he's got a crush on, who's, part of the normal crowd. She seems very sweet, Leslie. And he shows up, and of course, Leslie's not there. She claims she was out at her car, and I'm inclined to believe this character. So, of course, he walks into this. I guess it's a municipal pool. This is an after-hours party with a bunch of the high school kids. And, of course, the group of Chads, led by Tim, hijack him. What are you doing here, man? Why are you being so fucking creepy? He's like, I was invited. And, of course, it all ends up with Eddie getting thrown into the pool, backpack on, clothes on. Leslie's not there to say, hey, I invited him. She shows up, of course, after the effect when he's leaving. He yells at her. He says, I'm going to nail him. I'm going to nail every last one of them. He's pissed, and I don't blame him. So he goes home, and he starts playing Sammy's record. Now, there's this phenomena. Apparently, if you play, I've never, ever been able to do this, by the way. And yes, I tried. If you play a record backwards, so basically you're going to ruin your album doing this. You turn play, you start spinning it backwards manually, and there's supposedly hidden messages. Well, there's several hidden messages in this particular album. And, basically it's the ghost of Sammy kind of instructing Ragman on how to get back at these idiots. Because Sammy was also bullied and abused by his peers in his youth, so it's an in for Sammy's ghost to get in with Ragman and kind of revenge from beyond the grave, I guess is what I'm trying to spit out. I'm sure you figured out this escalates pretty damn quickly. First revenge is, kind of small enough. He ends up tricking Tim into blasting the teachers with a fire extinguisher in the teacher's lounge. Gets him into detention. It gives Eddie enough confidence to keep going. He shares this with Roger. Roger's like, man, I think you're losing your mind. I'm here if you want to talk. Roger's not believing a damn bit of this shit. But with each thing that happens, it escalates. So, second time Tim picks on him, it's in the shop class. Again, Sammy had given enough hints. Sorry, I had a string. To get Eddie and to lure Tim into shop class, and Tim just about loses an eye because of some kind of, I think, drill press. I am not familiar with these industrial machines, but it's a long pokey thing that I think pokes holes in metal. Well, it was going to poke his hole in his eye. And he stops it just at the last minute and kind of makes Tim very wary of picking on him. Well, let's see. So that got him a little worried, but then, Sammy basically instructs Eddie to give Tim a copy of the album, copied from record to tape, because you can do that. And it ends up putting Tim's girlfriend, Jeannie, in the hospital. The tape's in a Walkman, she's listening to it, and it basically melts her ears. But while she's listening to it, there's like a glowing green light coming out of the headphones into the wire. She gets all sensual, starts touching herself, and then this beast kind of shows up in front of her like he's going to do something. She screams. It's very interesting. But that beast was definitely, you can tell, rubber puppet thing. So at this point, Tim confronts Eddie. Eddie's like, nope, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm done. Well, at this point, I'm not done. I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. But Sammy had had all the time that he needed. He is now able to manifest, and he escapes after berating Eddie. He can tell. Okay, we're gonna have tones of Wes Craven's Shocker here. He can teleport via radio waves and electricity. So, definitely very Shocker colored, or Shocker is triggered. They share that in common. So Eddie gets Roger to break into Tim's car to get the cassette, because at this point, Eddie thinks he's destroyed everything. He's destroyed any copy he had, the acetate. So anything he had on him, he destroyed, thinking, that would be enough. Get the tape from Tim and destroy it. Well, Roger breaks into Tim's car, gets the tape, goes back home. Eddie calls him, "Did you destroy it?" "Yeah," but no, he's still holding on to it like an idiot. He plays it, and of course, Sammy materializes, and he orders Roger to take the tape to the Halloween dance and play it there, or I'll kill you, blah, that all threatening supernatural demon stuff. Now, the look of Sammy Kerr is very interesting. Like I said, think of, trashy heavy metal sleaze look. But the supernatural manifestation has half of his face burnt, from indicating that he died in a fire. So Roger shows up. He has an exchange with Leslie. Leslie's like, is Eddie here? Roger's like, no, I have no idea where he is. So he sneaks in, plays the tape over the PA system. Because this particular school does a combination of sound system music and then live band, so like the band can have breaks. Well, while the band is preparing to play, this background music from Sammy's album's playing, Leslie's on the phone with Eddie. It's like, "Hey, are you coming?" He's like, "No, I'm not feeling well." Really, he's not. He's just kind of hanging out at home. His mom's gone. He's supposed to be handing out candy to trick-or-treaters because it is Halloween. And he hears the song playing in the background, and he freaks out, hangs up, and just books it to the dance. Well, on the way there, of course, Sammy's kind of taking over the car, tries to kill Ragman. He fails. But he doesn't fail at manifesting himself at the dance. He replaces the lead singer and guitarist of the local band, and they start playing, and he just starts taking people out with electric bolts. It's interesting. It's cheesy. It's fun. It is definitely a picked on kids revenge fantasy come true. So Eddie also knows that Sammy is targeting Leslie now, so he's really, really worried. But yeah, Sammy's disintegrating audience members, wreaking havoc. Everybody's running and screaming, and the teacher that introduces the band is played by Charles Martin Smith. He's one of those I know those guy faces. I cannot think of something in particular because there's so much, but you'll recognize the voice, you'll recognize the face. He played a lot of teachers and bumbly type characters in that particular point. So he's your bumbly teacher character actor. So Eddie gets there. He finds Leslie. Now, Leslie had been accosted by Tim in the locker room as she was changing out of her Halloween costume into street clothes. He's like, Rembauer's all fucked up. Or Weinbauer, excuse me, is all fucked up. he fucked with Jeannie. He's dangerous. Tim tries forcing himself on Leslie, and I think she smacks him. She's like, what is wrong with you? So she puts him in his place. She and, Eddie meet up. But on the way to go find her, he runs into Tim, who's pissed off and is going to threaten to kill him and everything. Well, Sammy materializes behind him and kills Tim, so see you later, leader of the Chads. Again, it's a whole electrocution thing. A lot of electrocution and disintegrating and blowing up bodies in this one. Roger buys Eddie and Leslie some time by cutting the school power and temporarily stopping Sammy's attacks because Sammy doesn't have the electricity to draw off of. He doesn't die, so yay, we get to keep the sidekick. But at this point, they realize that Nuke still has a copy, and he's going to be playing it on the radio all over town. So Leslie and Eddie try to go and do something to stop it. They go to Eddie's house to get his mom's car. Sammy attacks them, but this is where they figure out that Sammy's vulnerable to water. Electricity and water, not a good mix. They figure this out. So they go to the radio station. They realize Sammy's been there. The night watchman's dead. And there's all kinds of, stuff protecting the tape, the radio station tape player, basically. He's protecting the tape, trying to keep them from destroying it. So Eddie steals a police car, puts a radio in the back, behind the grate, and he starts taunting Sammy through the airwaves. And he's like, it's just you and me now. You want to kill me? Come kill me. I think he said something about him being a washed up poser. And that's when Sammy appears. Of course, you're always going to have that person that, strutting around big and bad. The second you call them a poser, it's the second they get defensive. And that's exactly what happens. And that is what is Sammy's undoing. He's trapped behind the grate. Nowadays, I think it's a piece of plexiglass, but in the 80s, it was a metal grate that kept the perp away from the cop. He's trapped behind there. Eddie is zooming towards a river, because there's, a bridge in construction, at 80 miles an hour. Leslie's behind, waiting at the radio station as the backup to go destroy everything in case this doesn't work. Well, it works. The car goes over. Sammy's defeated. Eddie lives. He goes back to the radio station. And Leslie's there having destroyed everything. And we end on a happy note. This is a cheesy movie. I know I said I was going to talk about cameos, and I did mention Gene Simmons. We also have, and the Charles Martin Smith cameo. We also have, in 2 interviews on television, one's a character actress, and one is Ozzy freaking Osbourne. So Ozzy Osbourne is in this playing Reverend Aaron Gilstrom. Okay, think about that for 2 seconds. Yeah, I know. Those of you, very young millennials that remember the Osbournes, before that, Ozzy was not some doddering old dad. Ozzy was the Prince of freaking Darkness. He's, bit the head off of a dove and off of a bat, would snort fire ants to outdo Motley Crue type shit. And him playing a reverend, talking about how heavy metal is lewd and crass and unnecessary. The irony on that is thicker than molasses in January in Antarctica. And then another one is a little old lady that is played by Alice Nunn. Again, Gen Xers are going to remember this one. And Tim Burton fans will remember this one too. She played Large Marge in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I will never forget that face as long as I live. So that's your cameos. This was a delightful little treat of a movie. Just some side notes on this. So I keep mentioning Blackie Lawless as part of the mix that looks like it. They had actually approached Blackie Lawless to play Sammi Curr, but for some reason he could not do it. So they had approached two rock stars, supposedly, to play Sammi Curr. Both had bowed out for whatever reason. Now, our special effects, well, it's not over the top in this, and there's not a whole lot of, how we got to the dead bodies and smoked bodies. They were done by Kevin Yeager. Kevin Yeager was one of the Freddy Krueger effects guys, and he was responsible for the Crypt Keeper from Tales from the Crypt. He also cameos as the unfortunate lead singer and lead guitarist of the band at the high school dance. So, that would be Kevin Yeager right there. So all the Sammi Curr music was composed by the band Fastaway and composer Christopher Young. Christopher Young also went ahead and did music for some of the Hellraiser movies, The Gift, Spider-Man 3, Drag Me to Hell. So he worked with Sam Raimi. He also did Urban Legend, Ghost Rider, and The Uninvited. So he's prolific in the weird movie industry, I'll say. If you can get a hold of this one is a hoot. I definitely would suggest this in the October period. I just wanted to go over it now because little walk down memory lane thing. So we've got, if you're a metalhead, watch it. If you like your 80s slashers, watch it. If you want to see some fun cameos done by some faces you recognize, watch it. You might not want to watch it if, you're boob-averse, because there are boobs in here. If you want more gore, this isn't necessarily one you want to watch. But all in all, I think this was a fun little romp. It's a great little cult classic if you can get your hands on it. But I'm going to hiccup. I apologize. But if you can get your hands on it, it is definitely worth a watch. Like I said, I got my copy off of the Internet Archive under the title of Ragman. So maybe that will work for you. But I have seen it pop up in thrift stores, flea markets, antique stores. Because I wouldn't quite consider, VHS is quite antique just yet. Probably got another 30, 40 years on that. But I just don't want to feel like an antique, I guess. So, on that note, though, I'm gonna leave you guys with a positive, go watch this. And in the meantime, good night, my creeplings, and I'll see you next time. Bye.